Take it away.
So I was in South Carolina for many years of my life, and I always wanted to go to Biltmore State, but it never worked out with my schedule or my finances because it's a little pricey to go there. But Jennifer sent me a link a couple of years ago and was like, look, Biltmore State's hosting a Downton Abbey exhibit. So then I was committed. I had to go. So last year when my son was going to college in South Carolina and we had to take him down, it was the perfect time. And actually COVID was the perfect time because they limited how many people could go.
Oh, wow.
So I got 2 for the price of 1, and there were fewer people, so it was wonderful. But Jen and I both share a love of Downton Abbey, so I sent her pictures throughout.
And I was jealous the entire time. So for those of you that haven't seen Downton Abbey before, it begins with the sinking of the Titanic in 1912, and it chronicles the lives of the Grantham family from 1912 through 1927, and everything in their lives, but the main focus of their struggles in life are to try and keep Downton Abbey in the family, keep the castle in the family.
So in that, we get upon the idea of dollar princesses. There's several different things if you like Netflix and things about dollar princesses. But Cora from Downton Abbey was a dollar princess from the United States that brought her money to the relationship to save Downton Abbey. And the whole thing is revolving around saving that. So in conjunction with that, the real Downton Abbey, this house itself, Highclere Castle, was actually saved by not an American dollar princess, but was saved by a wealthy banker, which I'm going to circle back to in a second. The Biltmore estate that we'll be talking about was a Vanderbilt estate. The Vanderbilts had the most famous dollar princess. She was a niece, and she was pressured into a marriage with the Duke of Marlborough, and her dowry was $2.5 million, and saved their estate. And she became the cousin of Winston Churchill, which I found was fascinating with the real history. But Almina Womwell was the real woman that helped save Highclere Castle. She was married to the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, and that was the family that owned that house. Her father, she was the illegitimate daughter of Alfred de Rothschild. The Rothschilds were a huge Jewish banking family in Europe, and she brought all that wealth with her, so her illegitimate status was forgiven.
Didn't they talk about Rothschild in Downton Abbey too?
Yes. They referred to Hannah de Rothschild. The Dowager Countess was talking about her at a marriage. We won't speak of which marriage. But if you've seen the show, because we know some people are binging it now, if you've seen the show, when one of the people marries a Jewish banker, the Dowager Countess references the Rothschild. So we think that maybe the author, Julian Fellows, might have been familiar with the history of Highclere Castle.
Speaking of Highclere Castle.
So this is Highclere Castle. It was built in, it was repurposed or fixed up in 1840 by Charles Barry, who also designed the House of Parliament, which I found fascinating. And that was done around the time of the 3rd Earl of Carnarvon. The Biltmore House, yeah, go ahead. The Biltmore House was built in 1889, so they're pretty close to the same time period. The Biltmore House was designed by Richard Morris Hunt. It's the 4th largest private residence in the whole world. It is the largest private residence in the United States, and it has the largest basement. Right. But in the basement there is a swimming pool and a bowling alley and a Halloween room and a gym. Not like a whole basketball gym, but a gymnasium.
Well, and we have pictures later of
Yes.
the gym, so you'll get to see some of that.
Yes.
But now on to my favorite room. Oh, is that little?
Hello, ladies.
Yes, this is the
Coffee,
library.
I see.
Yes.
So good to see you both. We really need to get together soon. Good seeing you guys.
Literally, that's the coffee room?
No, this is the library.
Oh.
The library is 2 stories. It has about 24,000 volumes. The owner, George Washington Vanderbilt, was an avid reader. Talk a little bit more about that later, but this was my favorite room in the whole house. It was beautifully decorated, and the ceiling is painted. It's just gorgeous.
And in Highclere Castle, they had approximately 6,000 books in their library. And this is where you a lot of times see the Lord Grantham. He spends a majority of his time in the show in the library.
So Biltmore House embraced a lot of the modern conveniences. It was built with AC and DC electricity. At the time it was built, that was pretty, they weren't sure which direction the electricity was going to go, so they put in both. Had a couple of elevators. I got to ride on one, which was pretty special since not everybody did. And it had light bulbs, and even the pool was lit. As opposed to Downton, or Highclere, which still doesn't, if you read this book over here that Katie has on display, that has the recipes and things, she talks about modern day events, and their rooms still don't have central heat. They have to put a plug-in heater into each room.
And in Downton, there was quite a bit of talk of being scared of electricity and what would happen. And we have some
Yes.
quotes from Violet, actually, the Dowager Countess.
The Dowager says, "First electricity, now telephone. Sometimes I feel as if I were in an H.G. Wells novel." And I couldn't have electricity in the house. I couldn't sleep a wink. All those vapors seeping about. Her quips are our favorite. So this is the bedroom in Biltmore bedrooms. So George Vanderbilt would have his own, and his wife Edith had her own, and then there was this huge sitting area in between the two, which was beautifully decorated, although her bed was tiny, this one. I didn't show the bed in the picture, but it was a big room. Couldn't get it all in one. Our next slide here is a bedroom from
Do
Downton
you want me to
Abbey.
change it? This one?
So I say a bedroom from Downton Abbey. Why a bedroom, Jen?
Well, so in Downton Abbey, you see all these different bedrooms, and you think they're different bedrooms, right? They're not. They were all the same bedroom, redecorated every single time they needed to change the bedroom. So Cora, Mary, and Edith all have the same bedrooms in the show. And if you're really careful and you look out the window, it's the same view out the window every single time because it's the same room that they're using.
And so this was the set piece that they brought to the display at the exhibit of the bedrooms.
They said that there were layers and layers of paint and wallpaper and everything because they had to keep redoing it every single time.
So they're using the actual castle to film this show,
Yes.
but they're only allowed to use one bedroom?
Apparently, and there are like 250 rooms in that castle.
Right.
So I don't know why only one, but
Seems like a lot of work.
My thought was maybe it had something to do with lighting and that, I mean, technology and filming and all that. I don't
It
know.
was just the best room.
Also, they're still refurbishing the castle, so some of the rooms might not have been in good enough shape.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
The grounds at the Biltmore were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, who also designed Central Park. There's 75 acres of gardens. There's an Italian garden, a conservatory, a terrace, walled garden. It's just gorgeous. There's azalea gardens and lots of walking paths. You can spend your whole time actually in the gardens. Beautiful. Downton has some, but they don't show those in the show. Almost ever. Next we have the dining rooms side by side. When I was going through, this is the Biltmore, And that is the set of Downton Abbey, where all the guests would be. Served tea. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Yes, please.
So I was, as I saw this room, which is actually the breakfast room, I was kind of surprised how much it looks like the Downton room. Now this is, like I say, only like the breakfast or tea room at the Biltmore, and this is the cast main dining room, so all the parties and things were always held there, as opposed to the Biltmore, which has a ginormous, huge seat 64 table dining room in addition to this area. There were several visitors to the real Highclere Castle that were important, as well as Biltmore. In the show, Downton Abbey, there were lots of important duchesses and countesses, and a visit from
The king and queen
the king and queen. Yes.
in the movie.
Yes.
So,
in the
so after
movie.
you watch all 7 or 6 seasons, you have to watch the movie too.
Yes. So the visitors to Downton have been, to Biltmore, at least 5 presidents have visited, probably more. There have been some famous authors. The author of The House of Mirth, Edith Wharton. Henry James, the author of A Portrait of a Lady, both stayed in the house. The House of Mirth became one of the books that George Vanderbilt read. So fun fact about George Vanderbilt, he started the Books I Have Read journal when he was 12. And when he died, he had read 3,159, which averaged 81 books per year. And the House of Mirth became his 2,163rd entry into his book. Who were some of the people that visited Highclere?
Oh, there. Stanley Kubrick, recently. The royal family has been there, as well as General Patton during World War II.
And Biltmore also gets 3,800 visitors a day. So, just a couple. So COVID was a great time to go.
And just in case you ever wanted to rent Highclere and be part of Downton Abbey, so to speak, it costs $23,000 to rent Highclere Castle. And that helps to cover the cost of upkeep of the home and the grounds. And Highclere Castle is actually valued at about $240 million in 2018.
So you talked about what General Patton,
Yes.
famous general during World War II. Were there any war links?
Yeah, so in Highclere, they opened up Highclere and used it as a hospital during World War II. And they also did that in Downton Abbey as well.
Yeah, so another
world-
chance for Julian Fellows maybe knew something about the history of the house.
Right.
Highclere was also used as to host a school during World War II with the evacuation of London. And
I'm
there
sorry,
were,
it was, the war was World War I.
yes.
I said World War II, sorry.
Yes, a lot of things happened there, and that is explained in one of the books that is written by the current Countess at Highclere Castle. Got slide 11 now. These are some of the rooms at the Biltmore House that you can walk through on a tour. Just a lot of bedrooms, a lot of seating areas, music space. The music space was turned into a place to keep art safe from Washington, D.C. during World War II. They brought in several pieces from the art museum in Washington to keep them safe. Yeah, go ahead.
Kitchen.
So this is the kitchen set from Downton Abbey with Mrs. Patmore and Daisy there. It is much smaller in scope than the one at the Biltmore House. Was there some kind of a fact about?
Yes, so actually they did not use the kitchen in Highclere Castle to film Downton Abbey. They actually filmed on a set in London because the kitchen was in such disrepair they could not use it for filming.
All right. I believe the next slide will be the kitchens at the Biltmore House. They had like 5 different kitchens. They have like the pastry kitchen and the main kitchen and the rotisserie chicken. Kitchen.
I think Sarah's getting hungry.
Yeah, I must be hungry. And the huge pantries, and there was like regular pantry and like mason jar pantry here. And they also had a refrigerator, like a walk-in refrigerator. So they were definitely more of the modern conveniences than in Downton Abbey or even at Highclere Castle. This is the servants' dining room at the Biltmore, and the servants' dining room from Downton Abbey, also a set piece from the exhibit. Hi there, this dog reminds me of a little bit from Downton. The dog is the main character in Downton.
Yep,
What's the dog's name?
Isis.
So that is like an Egyptian name,
Right.
which I believe throws back to the fact that the 5th Earl of Carnarvon was working with Carter, Howard Carter, for 16 years. He helped fund Carter in his excavations in Egypt, and they famously discovered the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh King Tut. They were both there when it was opened originally, and he died from an infected mosquito bite shortly after. So then there was the whole drama of, was it the curse of King Tut? So I feel like the dogs' names were part of the story.
Definitely.
So anyway, this is a set piece of the Downton staff seating and dining room, as well as the Biltmore. And again, I thought they were very close, very similar. These are just a couple more of the exhibit, Carson's office and the stairs, the town stairs. Kind of a major part in the show.
It's the upstairs and the downstairs.
So here's the bowling alley and the swimming pool and the gymnasium in the basement of the Biltmore House. They also had a large hallway full of changing rooms that were quite nice and quite large. And Katie's favorite, the bells that star every show. And there used to be a servant that would stand there and watch to see which bell was being rung to send someone to that location. So the whole show begins with this telegram announcing the death of 2 of the family members from on the Titanic. So this is the whole beginning of the whole plight to save the castle, because one of these was supposed to marry Mary. I believe it's Patrick. So these are the kinds of artifacts that they had at the exhibit, and each one had a like historical reference on the side where you could read all about what was happening in history, along with the little props from the show. So these were just some of the props, like the dog that Matthew took to war, and Bates and Anna's portraits, and Mrs. Hughes' keys. But my favorite
Mine too.
were the gowns, all the dresses and gowns. There was a whole exhibit room pretty much dedicated to the dresses and the clothing.
And I don't know if this is so much of a fun fact, but none of the costumes were washed because they were so delicate. So they were very stinky. And they did have like pads that they would put in the armpits of the costumes, that they would wash those to try and help with the smell a little bit. But I mean, obviously when you are under hot lights and you are filming for hours on end, they did not smell well. And this one has a soldier in it. Well, actually, this is what the king wore in the movie. But that makes me think of the Queen. Yes. So Queen Elizabeth actually liked to watch Downton Abbey, and her favorite thing to do while she was watching was to watch for inconsistencies, and she actually found one. There was a medal that was given to one of the characters that was not introduced until World War II, and it was depicting World War I.
So there were lots of sequins and beautiful, beautiful gowns. These are just a few of them. And then, of course, the wedding dress section is always my favorite. Beautiful gowns for the weddings.
Okay, so we have Violet, the Dowager Countess's costume here with a quote that we thought fit very well. So you'll never find a dull moment in this house.
And she is also on your bags because she is our favorite. And she has so many little quips and fun little sayings as she as she speaks. So we have a few other facts, but we want to make sure you have some time for questions. So if you have questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is a weekend? Sorry, you have to be a fan to get that one.
Great quote by Violet, the
Yes.
Dowager Countess.
It is. Any other questions?
Were there bells at Biltmore House?
They had like an electrical servants calling that was built right. Like I say, they embraced the technology.
Yeah.
So like an intercom system almost.
I would say more of an like electric bell system,
Like a-
buzzing bell.
More like a doorbell type thing.
Oh, okay.
Instead of a nice, pretty little ringing.
Does anybody live in either house now?
Yes.
Are they still residences?
Yes, Highclere, they still live there
Yeah.
and host events. At Biltmore, they pretty much live in town in Asheville because this is right outside of Asheville. But it's still considered a residence, so they don't have the whole thing open, so I imagine that they probably go back and forth. Interestingly enough, it was a summer house.
That'd be nice.
Because the regular house wasn't good enough?
Apparently, New York, you had to escape New York and you come to the Asheville area to summer.
Why leave?
Seems like they had that in reverse. I would rather be in the South than in the winter.
Right.
But the property that they had was enormous, and they, when George died, his wife sold the property for less than $5 an acre to the U.S. Forestry Service to create the Pisgah National Forest. So the Pisgah National Forest was all part of what used to be the Biltmore Estate.
Wow.
So, and that was his wish because they were very much about giving.
Any other questions for our fine madams, ladies from Hey,